Ukraine's diaspora of professionals and refugees are playing an extraordinary role in supporting Ukraine, both materially, but also by raising awareness of its cause in their host countries and within the international community. Today, I'm speaking with Dana Pavlychko, CEO of United for Ukraine and owner of Osnovy Publishing. Welcome to the Silicon Curtain podcast. If you enjoy the materials we create, then please like and subscribe to help boost the popularity of our videos in YouTube. Just checking, Dana, did I pronounce those okay?
Perfect.
Okay, brilliant. Well, let's jump straight in. Do tell me, what was life like before the war for you? How did you fill your time? And I'd love to learn more about your background as a publisher.
Well, my life was, was a good life. I lived in Kiev for 13 years. Before the war, I had a business. We did quirky, artsy books and opened a bookstore / wine bar, bought a real estate property like downtown Kiev. I have 3 kids. My husband is a documentary filmmaker. So, we were kind of, living a dream life in Kiev and not expecting a war. I mean, I was naive or crazy or dealing with whatever issues I had going. And frankly, I mean, on the 24th, I had a hair appointment and, the war is not what I expected.
And that's you have that in common, I think, with many people. I remember the news reports of people going out for meals, meeting, walking, and the general air, I guess, of people just not believing something like this could happen in the 21st century, and until it did.
I mean, I was well aware of the war. My husband's parents live in Donetsk still, and they have been there since 2014, and we haven't, didn't see them. But I think I was so immersed in whatever problems you have when you live in a country like Ukraine that you just, you think this war news is just, one of the 100 problems you have to deal with. So it's kind of, life in a bubble. And I think that's why it was so shocking to many people, in Ukraine, like myself, who didn't expect this to happen.
And I think you have that in common with a lot of the analysts in Russia as well. I mean, some of the people that I watch frequently, none of them sort of seemed to believe this was going to happen. They all thought it was part of the diplomatic game of making sort of threats to gain concessions. But then it did, and you were in Kiev, I think, for most of last year. Is that correct?
I know I left. We left on the 24th in the evening. We were in shock. It was crazy. We were scared. I mean, I was terrified, and I was at the Euromaidan, the whole time. But when you're a mom, you have kids, just a totally different situation, 3 small kids. In the evening of the 24th of February, we decided to go west, go to Western Ukraine, stayed there for a week. And we realized that with 3 small children, it's just really hard to go into bomb shelters. It's just nuts. And we left, and friends, colleagues from a German publisher, Dom Publisher, set us up with a place to stay in a village in Bavaria. And that's how I turned up in Bavaria.
And how's that been? Have people been generally welcoming? Because we see quite a few videos of pro-Russian protests in Germany, which is deeply upsetting. You don't get those in the UK, apart from a few, extreme nationalists and agents who do very minor protests. You don't get that sort of mass scale stuff. So has that touched you at all, or not?
There are these incidents in Germany. There's a lot of pro-Russian people in Germany. But I mean, in Bavaria, we live in a small, really, really small village. I'd say for the most part, people were super welcoming, generous, wonderful, kind. And so just really life just turned upside down. It's just a totally different life now than what it was before. but I mean, I'm just very fortunate because I lived abroad for a really long time prior to the war. I speak English, I could, find my footing. It's super difficult for people, for women who don't know English or German, or, don't speak a foreign language. They're in a foreign country with kids, without their husbands. It's a brutal situation.
It is. We have a lot of refugees around here in the sort of Oxford area, especially in the sort of villages around and about. And that's another aspect, isn't it? Is that if you've come from a large city with all the amenities, the entertainments, the ability to get around and do stuff, and then suddenly you're in a little English village with, maybe a bus twice a week and no shop. It's really kind of tough.
Oh, for sure. It's so tough for people. And I mean, yet again, many of the displaced people, of the refugees from Ukraine, these are women, and they left behind their lives. They left their families, their husbands, they're with their kids, with, their elderly moms. And it's hard. You do have to count your blessings. It's good to be in a small village. It's better there than in a war-torn place, or some people don't even have a home anymore, but it's really tough. It's hard for teenagers as well. Very often it's harder than for smaller kids. So, I have colossal just empathy for everyone who's dealing with all of this. And you have to look at the news, and not even the news, it's your relatives, your family are on the front lines or in Ukraine, and your heart's just being ripped from your chest every single day.
Well, let's turn to United for Ukraine. This is an organization you're the CEO of, and I'd love to know about the sort of inspiration for it, how it was started, how it's sort of grown, and obviously we'll come to its impact in a minute as well.
I was very lucky to just come across United for Ukraine. I mean, just frankly, I was so down in March. I didn't know what was happening with my business. I was sad, I was crying, I was sobbing, and I just really felt that I have to do something new, different, and I'm just have a really just huge passion for, social change, and just doing something that's really meaningful and impactful for society. So I just somehow manifested, this role in United for Ukraine. And it's a phenomenal organization that was founded by two Ukrainians and two Swiss nationals. It's a Swiss-based organization, and it's aimed at supporting Ukraine. And what is really unique about this nonprofit is that it was founded by people who are not from the nonprofit sector. One of our founders is a really prominent lawyer. The other one has a fantastic, successful career in Google, and everyone who came to make United from Ukraine are people from marketing and IT, and just, all different kinds of walks of life. And many of these people are Ukrainian diaspora or displaced people like myself. So, we have a sense of urgency, and we have, this desire to move fast and break things, So, I mean, this is something that's not super common in this humanitarian sector. That's, I'd say, quite, for the most part, is just bureaucratic and slow moving.
My day job is in marketing, so I can kind of exactly understand that. I wouldn't want to say anything bad about my charitable clients, but there's a very different dynamic, let's say, in different organizations. And that's interesting. So you've got much more of a sort of media, marketing, even sort of tech kind of cadence to how you work, testing things out. If they work, you scale them up. If they don't, you sort of move on. How does it work in reality, and what kind of projects are you doing?
Our main program, and this is so amazing and lucky that it just came to be with these fantastic partners, is our emergency relief platform that we created together with Google and the International Rescue Committee and Signpost specifically. So just shout out to them for being a really great humanitarian partner, just so agile and forward thinking and progressive. And and Google support and Google fellows who helped us put together this platform. So essentially, the emergency relief platform is an online platform that gives information support and free legal support and housing on occasion to millions of displaced people, Ukrainians and displaced people by the war in Ukraine, across all the countries, 40 plus countries. And now we're going to more actively work in Ukraine and give legal support and immediate information support in Ukraine.
That's that's extraordinary. I mean, logistically, to get that all set up, and tech projects have a way of taking forever and going horribly wrong in many ways. So to get that set up so quickly, such a complex kind of demand, that the support by Google sounds like it was fairly critical to move at pace.
I think it was critical to just have outstanding top professionals from Google who wanted to be part of this project, who are just top-notch, best of the best, wanted to give back to society, and they were so passionate and they worked on this project. So you have this unique experience where you can build this tool with phenomenal people from Google, and also phenomenal people, volunteers, from all walks of life who supported this program and United for Ukraine, in all other aspects. And these are just phenomenal people, that have really successful careers, and they just wanted to give back. So it's great, and I think this is why the organization is so unique, because it's came, all these people came together. Many of them are Ukrainians or the diaspora, as I said, and they just wanted to do something, just unique and help Ukrainians in need.
Well, my next question was going to be about the impact, but I think you've sort of answered that. It does sound like it's reaching huge numbers of people, and it's helping them in aspects of their life that are absolutely critical to get them sort of set up and survive. Whether they're sort of professionals who are carrying on, their jobs abroad, or whether they're refugees who are sort of struggling to find a new role.
Yeah, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people receive information support from us, and it's anything from, do you need a passport to cross the border, to ideas on where to look for work. So it's really important information that there is huge information overload. People don't know how to find this information. And what's really unique about us is that we understand where these people, search for information, where they hang out, so we create information that is understandable to the people, to this community, and we just put it where this community hangs out online, and I think this is really special and really unique, and we don't stop where we are right now. We keep growing. We want to do, more things, give more value, and always analyze what we're doing. And apart from the emergency relief platform, what we're going to launch this year very shortly is our economic recovery initiative. And in essence, we want to give grants to micro, small, and medium-sized businesses in Ukraine, because we see this as, as the backbone of Ukrainian society. And we are just super into this idea that, these businesses that are in Ukraine, they need help right now, and this is important for our victory.
That's absolutely fascinating that you sort of touch upon that, because, one of the questions I noted down here is the challenging balance between, obviously, the initial concerns last year were survival and just sort of getting things set back up. But as that's moved on, people have moved much more into looking for ways to help, whether it's help each other or help on a bigger scale with sort of, promoting Ukraine and its interests. But there's a tricky balance there, isn't there, between advocating for material and support for the war, but also this conversation that is now beginning about rebuilding. So how do you sort of balance that within your project?
It all came to be really naturally. So the emergency relief, which we're doing and will continue to do, is this is a really big part of our work. But we all, the founders, the team, our new team members, we're really passionate about recovery, and strategic recovery. So we don't see our work as relevant to today. We want to do work and help Ukraine, for Ukraine to grow in a successful, sustainable, inclusive country, and be there in 10 years. The war will end, and I'm confident that it will end. And after this war, we will have to rebuild. How do we rebuild? How do these businesses change? How do these businesses adapt to, EU standards? So we have to lay the foundation right here, right now.
And a lot of the concentration, of course, is on material problems, whether it be housing and infrastructure. And that, of course, is the right thing. But there is going to need to be a lot of social and psychological support. And I know that part of Ukraine's infrastructure is far less developed than, say, providing utilities and so on. I spoke to an incredible Irishman who, during the, after the 2014 war, set up the first charity that helped ex-servicemen with, PTSD and psychological issues. And it's extraordinary that was the sort of first one. There are many, many more now who sort of, copied that model. But we're talking about a much bigger problem here, aren't we? There are going to be millions of people who have been in the country, in occupied territories, near the border areas, under fire in the large cities, but also refugees returning as well. And all are going to have, to a greater or less degree, some kind of, psychological trauma. So is that also part of the rebuilding process?
This is a fantastic question and a really important topic, and this is what we feel really passionate about. In our emergency relief platform, we do provide information about psychological help that you can receive online, for example, and we do work with some partners who give free psychological help online. So this is really important for us, and it's also important for us to provide, tools and information that can help just thousands of people, if not millions. In terms of what we're doing with emergency relief in our economic recovery, so we're focusing really on economic recovery, because this is something that we see a huge importance for Ukraine and for people right now in Ukraine. For example, there's the story of this lady in Kiev, and her husband died, and they had a little cheese, factory, tiny cheese factory, and she's left running this business, all by herself with 2 kids. So we understand that we want to help her with both funds and, educational support to be able to, to help her business survive.
And that sort of medium-sized businesses, not only are they going to be critical for economic recovery, they are also critical to ensure that Ukraine doesn't return to an oligarchical structure to the economy, media holdings, political influence, and so on.
For sure. I mean, these companies, they're the backbone of Ukraine's economy. This is 90% of Ukraine's economy. So this is really something that we have to support, develop, and if we do, this will create, serious positive change for Ukrainian society in the long term.
And does this also fit well? I mean, as I've come to sort of speak to many Ukrainians, one of the defining characteristics has been the idea of self-organization, and it's in stark contrast to this is going to be quite a broad statement here, because of course there are Russian entrepreneurs and there are people who are sort of self-starters in Russia, no doubt, but as a national characteristic, it does seem that Ukrainians have an extraordinary capacity to self-organize, and they see a problem and they'll go and sort of not wait for sort of government or somebody else to solve it. They'll go and try to start sort of innovating to solve that problem. And I know this wasn't immediately there from independence, but over the last 30 years, that does seem to have evolved significantly. and especially since the Orange Revolution in the first instance, and the Revolution of Dignity seems to have just accelerated this characteristic.
I mean, Ukrainians, this is what we do. I mean, we do self-organize. This is just something unique, outstanding, interesting. I fascinated by this subject. I mean, what people are doing, how they organize with the war, I mean, everyone has like 10 jobs right now. You have your job, you have your volunteering mission, you have I mean, it's nuts. People are phenomenal. This is something unique. I mean, people have to write books about this. I'm fascinated by it, and I think this is really commendable and really fascinating.
And the other aspect of it is the strong lead shown by sort of female entrepreneurs, by female thought leaders. This seems to be another characteristic that so much of this innovation, especially in the cultural sphere, is being led by strong female characters. And of course, the Nobel Prize winner is a fantastic example of that.
What a fantastic lady she is. Oleksandra Matviichuk, I mean, I really recommend to anyone listening to us just to listen to her speech when she was receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. She's just an outstanding person. What a humble, fantastic lady she is. And we were very fortunate to meet her, to work with her. She was in a film that United for Ukraine did with the Nobel Women's Initiative about women in Ukraine, just there working, and supporting the war effort, basically, and this is this film, this work, and learning about Oleksandra's work is really what inspired us to have women lead as one of the pillars of our economic recovery, because we want to give grants to businesses that have a woman owner or CEO, and this is really important. Men are at the front lines, and women need finances to have their business relocate, for example, or have their business improve in operations excellence. And frankly, not only get a grant, which can really change their lives, but also get knowledge. How do you grow as an entrepreneur? So women are incredible, but I really, really want to support these women and give these women, these opportunities, because they need them, and they would benefit, and they would grow from them.
And expanding upon that sort of that attitude that is so much on display there, the war is in some respects being characterized as a civilizational one. I know Russian propaganda put that label on it, but there's a deeper level at which it's a clash of civilizations or ways of existing, isn't it? You have the remnants of Soviet thinking and very much imperial thinking on the Russian side, extremely outmoded cultural and strategic sort of modes of behavior there. And then on the other hand, you have the Ukrainian civilization, which is essentially looking westwards, looking towards Europe, and not just to copy Europe, to become, I believe, a sort of leading force in the evolution of European civilization. What do you think about that? I mean, is that something you sort of think about, that sort of clash? And or do Ukrainians just want to move beyond, Homo Sovieticus?
I think we've moved. We were always beyond Homo Sovieticus. We were always a free, leaning, democratic country. You can see this in the history of Ukraine. For centuries, we tried to fight Russia and just have our independence and have our own culture and language, and we are a free-spirited democratic nation. Russia, on the other hand, is, they have a very, it's also a colonial thinking that they have, and even modern Russians that don't support Putin and the brutality, I think, just still cannot understand what is happening. And and repent. And this is, it's not just about this war. This has been going on for centuries. This has been going on with many peoples within Russia that Russia has oppressed. I mean, the horrors that happened, in other nations like Georgia and Chechnya. So, this is not something new. So it was just this brutality. I mean, this brutality is just, it's extraordinary, right? But I think that Russian society just has a lot of listening and learning to do, and understanding that they are also part of the problem.
And that's reflected an attitude you sometimes hear from Russians who have left the country, left stuff behind. They might, if they're not thinking about their words too carefully, say that they're victims too. And that is a line which I know just winds Ukrainians up quite understandably, to a point of being absolutely, it's maddening. But at the heart of it, I think, is another issue, isn't it? And that is the difference between how Russians and Ukrainians defend their rights and privileges.
I just find it hilarious that some, people who haven't had anything to say about Russian politics or the horrors that happened within Russia, the police brutality, and they were always okay. And just now they woke up to this horrible Putin regime. That's just crazy. That's just bonkers. And I mean, I have no sympathy for the struggles that they have, because they were just okay with everything, so now they feel that life is difficult, now. But guys, where were you this whole entire time? Where, why weren't you saying anything? And I mean, I have friends like this. I have friends in Russia, and they never wanted to discuss politics, and they turned their eyes away, and they liked living in their bubble of everything being okay and making money in Moscow. And now they're victims, I mean, it's just to compare yourself with people whose whole families were murdered, I mean, this is beyond belief, the horrors that people have to incur in Ukraine, death, rape. I mean, it's just beyond me.
I think they thought of politics as a kind of Ukrainian disease. I think even the liberals, to an extent, had a horror of Maidan and the forces that it unleashed. And that's, if I ever get the Russian opposition on this channel, which hasn't happened to date, one of the questions is going to be about the need to sort of, breaking eggs to make an omelette. It seems that Ukrainians have been able to sort of en masse depose governments that were reverting to autocratic modes of ruling, and were able to prevent this country from sliding into where Belarus is now, which is completely owned, controlled, really by Russia through sort of proxies, with the sort of terror that we see there. And of course, the Belarus language has all but died out, and is certainly not a political force. So I'm trying to mix up politics and language here, but actually culture, identity, language, politics, they all kind of come together, though, don't they?
Oh, for sure, for sure. And it's just curious, because I've just recently read this from a Russian national who now lives in the UK, that nationalism is an atavism, and it's just retrograde to think in these terms, and it's a privileged position of someone coming from an empire. And for people in Ukraine, language is something that kept us alive for centuries while we were brutally, people were murdered for centuries. Ukrainians were murdered for centuries by Russian. So this is why for Ukraine, language is such a big deal. And this is why people are speaking Ukrainian now. People who didn't know Ukrainian and spoke Russian their entire lives.
And
right?
I
So
think, yeah,
you
yeah.
have to understand this from different perspectives, right?
And there are different modes of nationalism. Well, we'll come to culture in a minute, because I think it'd be interesting to kind of explore cultural aspects, which I know as a publisher you're very deep into Ukrainian culture and its sort of the period of renaissance that actually it's been undergoing. But as someone who's sort of lived in Scotland, you know, you need to make the distinction between cultural nationalism, a relatively sort of progressive force that has a lot more to do with literature and identity, and imperial nationalism, which is a nationalism which seeks to impose itself onto other identities and in some cases expunge them.
And indeed, this is how I see this. You know, I am part of a progressive community of people, and all we want is a place for Ukrainian culture and for Ukrainian identity amidst many identities of this world.
And I mean, the last area I wanted to ask about really was cultural loss and cultural regeneration, because Russia has on purpose targeted educational institutions. It's targeted museums, art collections, even many individuals, musicians, conductors, writers, and so on have been targeted. So once this is all over, I mean, what is going to be the impact in terms of cultural loss, human and material cultural loss, but also what is going to be the impact in potentially the positives, which is sort of creating a new determination to preserve and innovate Ukrainian culture?
People are so adamant, you know, Ukrainians are so adamant about winning, and supporters of Ukraine, non-Ukrainians, that we will have a renaissance, and it's happening already in terms of people just really being into Ukrainian culture. I mean, people who were, you know, not into it and were Russian speakers and weren't as, you know, passionate about this are, you know, all united. So this is, you know, creating a new Ukrainian culture, a new progressive culture. So I'm just really excited about this, and I can't wait for, you know, victory, for all of this to, you know, to really be booming.
And there are great news sources as well. So in the description, we'll put some links to articles and sources and writers. But I see that you've done quite a lot of sort of podcasts, including the excellent one on Ukraine World. So, I mean, what's your plan for the coming sort of weeks and months? How are you going to be, you know, continuing to sort of support Ukraine and keep its awareness in the media high?
My goal is to just raise millions for phenomenal people in Ukraine. This is what's important. So this is what I'm passionate about, and this is what I really want to have my focus on. You know, I people need money, people need expertise in Ukraine. You know, they don't need, you know, they need thank you and but they really need this, and this is where I think this is where we come in as an organization, and really be passionate about spreading, you know, the good word about Ukraine. We just have to we believe in victory, and we have to have the world believe in victory and be excited about this, because this is a, you know, this war is about everyone. I you know, I've watched wars before. Obviously, I'm more interested in what's happening in the world than most people, but still, you know, it's some war, you know, you're not as passionate about this. But this, guys, this is serious stuff. I mean, Russia, if Russia wins, we'll have, you know, fascists in everywhere, in the UK, God knows where. I mean, the amount of money these corrupt regimes have to do just awful things, it's crazy. We
Yeah.
have to be vigilant. We have to be vigilant. And this is why, even if you don't care about, you know, the horrors that are happening in Ukraine, just care about your own life and your society, and don't let, you know, a-holes run the world.
And if people want to support and partner with what you're doing, we'll put links into the description. But, you know, do you encourage people to get in touch and seek out if they can help?
Yes. Get in touch at ufu.global. You can donate to our recovery initiative, and you can donate to our Women Lead initiative. We're raising millions of euros, of dollars, to benefit, you know, small, medium-sized businesses in Ukraine. and just reach out. If you're, a company, say hi, and maybe we can do a project together. If you have expertise, reach out. If you just want to help, just reach out, and hopefully, we'll respond, in a timely fashion, and just, keep supporting Ukraine. This is really important, and we need the support. It means a lot to people, just really means a lot to people. It means a lot to people on the ground.
Yeah, that morale aspect is incredibly important, not just material support, but the morale and, helping to fight the trolls and the bots and the negative voices.
You have to, and you have to be positive, because I know some people are down. I mean, my sister's in Canada, Victoria, and she gets really sad and just nervous about everything. But, I keep telling her that we have to be positive. We have to persevere. There's still a long road ahead. So that's why we have to keep positive, especially for the people on the ground. They have to, Ukrainian soldiers in the trenches, they want us to be upbeat.
Yeah, they need that energy to go through terrible physical conditions. Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, Dana, this is incredible work that you and your team are doing. The fact that you've got such incredible international support from the likes of Google, I think, has been absolutely brilliant to talk about that. And I do encourage people to sort of get involved and do what they can. But it's been a huge pleasure speaking to you. And, as your projects evolve, I'd love to sort of share that sort of news and successes with my channel as well.
Thank you. And thank you for being a Ukraine supporter. It means a lot.
Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.